Question for you all today, my friends. How do you ensure your thought leadership matures as your business and perspectives evolve? Well, today we're going to dive in with a special guest, so hold on to your seats.
This is the Grow Your Business for Good show. We're your hosts. I'm M. Shannon Hernandez.
And I'm Amy Hager.
This show explores what happens when a business outgrows its message and what it takes to rebuild messaging systems that carry the full depth of your work.
Each episode breaks down how messaging shapes trust, authority, and decision making, and why many established businesses find themselves explaining more while being understood less. We focus on the strategic shifts founders and leadership teams need to make when clarity alone isn't enough, so their expertise comes through without oversimplifying it. So your thought leadership has evolved. And I think that as entrepreneurs and our thought leaderships evolve in our special industry or our focuses, it's interesting to see how the audience and how we as entrepreneurs react. And so today I'm super excited because we are going to talk about specifically the event space. And as an attendee and as a host, how that has changed and how that has evolved. And with me today is Afreen Huq, and she is the co-founder of Herd Ventures. And perfect timing for this interview. I think it just kind of happened based off of the schedules. But Afreen and I just came off from actually an event this weekend that she was hosting. I got to be behind the scenes and, part attendee, part team and see how everything kind of went down. But what I've always been really impressed with my conversations with you, Afreen, is how both of us have noticed this dramatic shift in the event space. And I think you're able to articulate it a lot more clearly than I am. So I'm so glad you're a guest today on our show.
Thank you for having me. And this is my favorite conversation. I think I was born with a walkie-talkie in my ear and a clipboard because I've been doing events since I can remember, over 40 years, just even in my living room, putting together gatherings so that people can connect. And I think right now is a really good time to take a moment to pause and reflect about what's been happening in the event industry over the last 6 years or so, because so much has changed.
Yeah, and so I think that's a perfect place for us to kind of start. What have you specifically noticed within the event space in the last 6 years?
Yeah, so I mean, we'll just call it out the elephant in the
Yeah.
room in 2020. The events had to shut down, including the ones that I was hosting. And that was the main revenue stream for our business. And like many other industries, we all had to pivot. But I started to look into the data of it, and it was surprising to me to see that almost 80% of the event industry collapsed. But here's the surprising piece is that it took about 4 years to bounce back, and now it is a $1 trillion global market. And this is across multiple industry reports. So there may be people that have retired events because of that time frame where they had to shut it down, but we're seeing a surge where people are hosting events again.
And I totally agree with you. And I think as we're seeing this surge, we're seeing events put on really well. We're seeing events put on very differently than what we used to see them. And we're also seeing people who have never done events before who are trying to do events for the first time. And so I'm kind of curious, why do you consider events to be a really important platform for entrepreneurs as they're growing their thought leadership? And also tie this back to your business and your brand. Why is this an important platform for your business?
Yeah, so let's zoom in a little bit about this phrase of thought leadership because I think that's really important.
Hmm.
When we're talking about thought leaders, leadership is a construct inside of a community. So you're leading to an audience or you're leading to a community. So as a host, you have a responsibility to the attendees to lead them through an experience. And right now, because so much has transferred online in terms of virtual events and social media, one another statistic, again, I love research, is that it says that being somebody that is in person increases the trust factor 20x versus a digital
Oh,
touch point. So I want to say
right.
that again. So the trust factor increases 20x when you are in person. And we just came from an event, or think about any event that maybe you attended. You walked in, you didn't know somebody, they spoke on stage, you shook their hand, you spent some time connecting with them, and now they're on your calendar. So being able to have that accelerated connection and being able to bring people closer together so that we are actually collaborating and having conversations, I think that that makes a huge difference for any thought leader that's trying to build relationships and nurture the relationship capital in your business.
Yeah, and I think that relationship capital is something that a lot of us really, really deeply value. We talk about being able to serve and show up and support each other and being community. And so that relationship component is very much so key. And that is a lot easier to build that trust when you can actually be in person. But also, I think what I love about the in-person events and even what I witnessed this weekend when, new people to the room, never met each other, completely different walks of life, completely different parts of the country in one room, is you do get to witness people in like their true essence. And, it was interesting because we had people who were there who were specifically there to make sure that we moved our bodies. It wasn't just making sure that we're moving our minds and our thoughts forward
And I
as
think that's a
entrepreneurs.
great point because I think that is something that also evolved as we're talking about events
Yeah.
evolving, thought leadership evolving, how you hosted events before may
Yeah.
need to be reimagined because the way that people want to experience events, it's more than slides and eat coffee and, chicken dinners. We want to be able to
Right.
have dynamic experiences that are memorable and that have us feel like something stirred us inside and maybe a little bit unexpected as well. So I think
Mhm.
that's why integrating movement and videos and like different exercises and gamification is also really big, that you really have to be thoughtful about how you're curating from when they walk in to after they leave.
And I think that's really key, curating the experience from the time they walk in the door until they leave, and even after when they leave. Like, what is your reach out to them? Is it going to be really personal? Afreen, I witnessed you say this weekend. I absolutely loved that, and I'm here cheering you on. Or, I don't think you can get away with just the standard scheduled emails that go out after an event to attendees any longer because it really is about building those deep personal relationships. And so when you think about the other thing that I think that I've seen really change, and you kind of talked about this, is the thought leaders, the speakers, the presenters themselves. That game has massively changed. We can't just stand up there and give our expertise because unfortunately there's this lovely thing called AI and Google and YouTube and all these places where you can go and get expertise for free. And so it really is, what kind of experience are you going to create for your attendees at that in-person event? And that puts a lot of different pressure on thought leaders and speakers.
Right. I think my approach to that is that we want to leverage all of the intelligence of the room, not just AI. So the thought leader, I think previously would come with a prepared presentation, your body of work, your life's work, and you put it in slides. Maybe there's a handout and some type of system, right, to walk people through a framework. And I think that's still valid. That is foundational. Don't throw that away. But what we want to do now is actually point the content to the community so that the community is actually applying it and they're immersing themselves in it, they're workshopping it. People want to have that more hands-on experience and not just be spoken to. So I think
Yeah.
that that's an important point. And I wanted to share just one way that we're using AI. I think it's in an interesting way that may be helpful to some of the listeners here is that a lot of the hybrid events or live stream events, the experience is inside of the chat room. You saw this weekend. There's just
Yeah.
so much conversation that is happening. So a lot of times I have seen live stream events where it's more webinar style and it's just direct to camera with a share screen and you're going through slides, but you want to be able to have an opportunities to engage with the audience and see how are they tracking the information, what are they giving feedback for, what questions do they have? And one of the ways that we're using AI is at the end of the day, we're downloading the chat and we're uploading it into AI to provide summaries and what are the key takeaways, what are the different questions that are coming up. And then in real time, before the end of the day, as you saw in our event, we would have our moderators reflect back what was happening because it's happening so fast, the way that we're
Yeah.
consuming content. But to make it meaningful and for people to really anchor into the thought leadership that you're bringing to the table, we want to make sure that we're taking that time to reflect and have that dialogue. And I think that makes it really dynamic to be able to leverage these different tools of in real time content from this great market research because you have people
Right.
that are actively sharing about what they experienced in the event.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing too that like Shannon and I are really doing here is we'll have an event and we will take that chat, we'll take that transcript and we'll get that summary. And from that summary, then we actually create our follow-up content. We're not creating it before the events anymore. So we don't have the post-event email that goes out that hour after the event closes anymore because we're wanting to make sure that we can be thoughtful. And if there's resources or something that came up in that conversation, we want to be able to provide that to people after the conversation and not just the general email of, oh, getting on my calendar and such. And don't worry, that's all part of it as well. Trust me. But really creating that immersive experience where someone can leave feeling so heard, so seen, so loved, and so inspired to be a fan of yours, to be a part of your community, to be a part of, to plan a friend's business name, to be a part of your herd. And so it's really, really fun to be able to bring some of those tools in, especially with AI, to help us really narrow in and focus so that we can give those amazing recaps either on site like you did or like Shannon and I are doing in the post email. But I'm
Yeah, and
curious.
I'll add to that. I think historically, like messaging for post events, it would just be templates, like insert name of
Right.
event and here are 3 bullet points. But I
Yeah.
love the thought leadership from your company in terms of making sure that you're reflecting back in the words of the attendees what
Right.
really mattered to them and being able to leverage that. I mean, that again, that's thought leadership in action.
Yeah. And so I'm curious, what strategies, are there other strategies do you think people are missing when they're hosting or speaking at an event nowadays? Again, the
Yeah,
game has changed.
the game has changed. I have been doing events specifically for entrepreneurs for over 14 years, and the number one outcome that most people hire me for is to be able to convert a high ticket offer, which is fair. So you go to an event, and if you're hosting, maybe there's a mastermind or a product launch, and you drop that offer, and that is something that is can be really effective in events. But something that I want to open up the conversation a little bit wider is that usually the conversion rates for events is going to be anywhere between like 10, and if you're really highly converting the event, and maybe 30%. But what about the other 70 people? So
Yeah.
I think sometimes that people leave a lot of opportunities on the floor by not including the other 70% of the room. So if you have, let's say, 100 people and you convert 30 into a program, the other 70, if they're not taking a next action, then they're moving on to another community. So think about other ways that you can create a movement where people can become fans and they show up to the next event or there's free resources. So really making sure there's multiple pathways for engagement and not just one offer.
Yeah, and I think that's so true. And again, it's so interesting how many people here at Joyful Business Revolution have been in our email database for 13, 14, 12 years, and they feel seen and heard. And we've had people come back a decade after having an experience with us and eventually working with us because the time was finally right for them. And so I do think that's a really important part of this, Afreen, is to yes, you want to make sure that when you're doing the events and that you're having the conversions happen, but what are you doing to continue to support those people who are interested, who have now some trust and experience with you, but they just may not be ready today. So I think that's really, really important and something that I take pride in of leading here at Joyful Business Revolution. Like I definitely touch base with a lot of people
Yeah.
to see like, hey, you learned how to do the 5 steps of the recognition marketing from us, 2 months ago. How has your website changed? Did you make that update that you said you were going to make?
Yeah, there's
And
a
I'm
genuine care in how you have
exactly
conversations, and it goes back to building relationship capital
right.
because I think the strength in that is so much stronger than one transaction for a sale.
1,000%. I think 1,000%. And I think that's what I love that is so value aligned with both of our companies and how we kind of see things. I want to flip over a little bit to your personal story because you definitely have evolved your thinking and how you're doing things. Clearly, you just kind of told us a few of them with the events. But when you really think about what has shifted and what has changed for you over the years as an entrepreneur, what do you think the biggest difference is from Afreen here today, 2026, compared to, Afreen even just 3 years ago?
Yeah, I think it's a great conversation, and it's something that I've been writing about, which is calling out the elephant in the room. My other company is called Red Elephant, and there's a lot of things that I adopted that I feel no longer serves anymore. And it worked in terms of I built a seven-figure business, but being able to have that time after the event industry collapsed and just looking at, okay, I don't want to build that same business again. I want to create something that is really aligned with the future that I'm creating as a new founder. And some of the things that I felt that I needed to take a look at, especially if we lean back into events again, is that there's just this expectation that events were going to be this pitch fest. So if you've
Mm,
ever been to a
yeah,
3-day conference,
yeah,
typically day two is the offer, day three is the repitch, and then you get invited to a lunch. And people started getting tired of this methodology because people would spend almost $1,000, and now it can be even more with the hotel rates going up and flights,
right,
everything like that. So to spend almost 4 to 6 hours listening to a pitch, people were getting frustrated and now they're opting out of attending events. So
right.
something that I have as a practice right now, and it is a bit of a risk because that is a way that we used to monetize, but I really want to restore the essence of why events, which is community gathering, thought leadership, and connecting people to one another. So we removed, and you saw this at our event, we don't have any pitches during the run of show that is dedicated to the attendees. And the way that we are having people find out about our offer is permission based. It's during a break, it's something that is optional so that people can really experience the essence of the community, the content. And that's something that I am taking a stand for.
Yeah. And I think that again, it's really, really cool to see that shift. And, I was just at one of those 3-day conferences and I left during the pitch because I
Mm.
knew I wasn't there to be pitched to. I was there to meet some of the other attendees and to really look for collaborators and look for entrepreneurs who are kind of at the same level that we're at. I did not have any wants or desires to work with the person who was hosting the event, but I knew there would be others like me in the room, which is why I went. And so it was interesting because I realized I missed in air quotes for those of you who can't see us, a day and a half basically of a 3-day conference because I didn't stay there for the pitch. And I think that as a speaker myself who speaks on, at least a couple stages each month, I'm flying pretty consistently. And normally I'm not the one who is pitching. It's if it's happening, it's not happening with my section of the presentation or of the conference. It is going to be interesting to see as I continue to travel the rest of this year, who maybe is still using that model of having that day and a half pitch. And are there other conferences or other hosts who are seeing the need for the shift like you and make it more of permission based, make it more optional. If you want to stick around for the extra hour afterwards, or if you want to stick around during this break, to hear how you can work with us, giving that option to the audience instead of making them feel guilty for sneaking out of the back of the room.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it could be this kind of product life cycle on its way out, and
Yeah.
it could be a moment to reimagine. And I think that this is an opportunity. As I mentioned earlier, it's $1 trillion market. So there is something that is a demand for people to be in these rooms. So being able to experiment, what I'm seeing a lot of fun is seeing people reinvent how events should happen. So, one of the things that we did together is shoot a podcast episode style while on stage and then streaming that. So it's a little bit more relaxed. It's not direct to
Yeah.
camera, and being able to reinvent how you're delivering content, I think is something that is really exciting to explore right now.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Is there any other, okay, if you could get out that crystal ball or that magic 8 ball that we used to shake when we were kids and get the non-related answer to our question most of the time. I mean, what is your hope for the future of the event space, of the speaker space, and as someone who's hosting events themselves?
Yeah, well, I think that this isn't the elephant in the room, which is that people are feeling isolated right now.
Yeah.
And I think that for people to feel connected and find spaces where they are celebrated and they're seen, and you saw this in the event that happened, that it really matters. And I think that previously, like I was going for numbers, like we put 150 people in a room, or some events that I produced for clients, 500 people in a room. And I think that that's something to celebrate, but a small room of 10 people
Hmm.
can shift and be something that is life-changing. So being able to create small rooms and have big impact is something that I hope to see more people take the opportunity to provide their leadership, because the world needs people that are going to take care of people and guide them through a conversation where they want to contribute and make a difference.
I love that. I absolutely love that. So, Freen, how, if any listeners today want to join you on one of your events, how do they find out about your events?
Yeah, so we're offering a free gift called Your Stage Awaits. And so I really would love for anyone that is curious about wanting to create events through connection, through influence, maybe it can be a revenue driver, that we can give you a framework that we've used that I just updated in this new era of events, of how you can reimagine how to host. And this Your Stage Awaits bundle, it includes this framework. It's an e-course. It also includes a free ticket. So come check out one of our events, to one of our 3-day events. And I love checklists, as you know, as an event planner. So you can
Yeah.
also get one of our guides as well to download, to make sure that you have that every time you either step on stage or you host your next event.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And as you've been kind of listening into this conversation, feel free to seek either of us out on social media and share your experience with events. And I think the thing that I'm taking away from our conversation and the shift that we're seeing is one, not only permission-based pitching for your services, but two, really focusing on creating that intimate experience that someone feels so seen, so heard, and so connected that it doesn't matter if it was 100 people in the room or 10 people in the room. They are all leaving with their cup so full from the experience that you've put on.
I love that. I think when you nail that, people will keep coming back over and over and over again.
Yeah, most definitely. And if you are curious on attending one of the Joyful Business Revolution events, we do have something coming up on this week. And so you have to get on over to joyfulbusinessrevolution.com/trusted voice. And this is really going to display what Afreen and I have been talking about. It's a curated conversation that has really been focused on connecting experienced business owners and founders for those who have outgrown surface level rooms and who those are looking for deep conversations where it's not the recycled same like advice and insights, and where there's not that just general kind of surface level advice, but where you can have like a real conversation with another business owner or two or three or four, depending on how big the breakout rooms end up being, and really feel like you're leaving that room with some really great new insight on things that you just might be missing. We're always a big fan of the saying, you can't see the label of your jar because you're inside it. You need someone else to see it. So our goal with the trusted voice is to really create that safe space so that you can really open up, share what's going on in your business, and see if you can have a new solution or an idea that you already have come to fruition. So the Trusted Voice is happening on April 22nd, and I would love for you all to please join us. So go to joyfulbusinessrevolution.com/trusted voice. So Afreen, thank you so much for joining me
Thank
today.
you, Amy.
You all have a beautiful rest of your day. That is a wrap for this season. Don't worry, Shannon and I will be back this summer with a lot more beautiful information, focusing on how to grow your messaging, especially when it comes to having your ideal client recognize themselves in the words that you're saying. So we'll see you all soon. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to Grow Your Business for Good. This show is a part of our work at the Joyful Business Revolution, where we help founders and leadership teams rebuild messaging systems when their work has outgrown their message. If you're explaining too much and people still don't fully understand the value of your work, you can explore more at joyfulbusinessrevolution.com.
Until next time, remember this: when your messaging system is aligned, sales conversations shorten, and your expertise comes through clearly.